All right, we have 10 o'clock. Are we ready to get started?
Yep.
I think so. All right.
For roll call.
I'm gonna see you over here. I'm gonna take my mask off and stay away from everybody. I'm just being extra cautious. There was a chance I was exposed. It's not necessarily confirmed, so just be a little bit extra careful. But good morning, everyone. I hope you guys all enjoyed the Rise and Shine breakfast hosted by Pines if you stayed for that. We are really excited to have our veterans panel discussion. So before we get started, we would like to recite the Pledge of Allegiance. So if everyone would stand. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Okay. Welcome everyone and thank you for joining us. Today's panel discussion is veterans and their core values. My name is Amy Wolf and I'm the community liaison at VNA Hospice. I have the pleasure of filling in for Erica Kirkus. She is our We Honor Veterans Program Coordinator and unfortunately she couldn't be here today. So she asked me to step in. So hopefully I can fill her shoes. A very special thank you to our panelists and our We Honor Veterans Committee for making this discussion possible. So I'd like to introduce our panelists. We have Anthony Pallotta, Veteran Service Coordinator at Purdue University Northwest. Lenny Corso, Adjunct Professor at Ivy Tech Community College. And Sherry Phillips, Air Force Engineer. We will have some time at the end for questions, but we're just gonna jump right in. So panelists, can each of you tell us a little bit about your background?
Ladies first.
Okay. My name is Sherry Phillips. I was in the Air Force from 1993 to 1997. I was an engineering assistant, did computer-aided drafting and surveying. After I got out of the Air Force, I worked for the Air Force as a civilian for a few years. Then I went to college, got my teaching degree, then I moved to Guam and I taught dependents on Anderson Air Force Base in Guam for a few years.
My name is Anthony Plata, Marine Corps veteran. I served from 2010 to 2014. I did one tour to Afghanistan in 2013. A lot of last when I was in. I was the last class to graduate Fort Knox, Kentucky for the tank school before they moved to Fort Benning. Last tankers to deploy to combat, the last Marine Corps tankers to ever deploy to combat, because as of May 2019, I'm all the last of the Marine Corps tankers. So, now I went to, after my service, I went to Southern Illinois University Carbondale, where I worked at the Vet Center there. Became the SVA president there for about 4 or 5 years, and then got the job at Purdue Northwest. Been there ever since. We have a great bunch of vets up there. If you ever walk into the vet center, there's at least 5 or 7 vets in there at all times, and it's a pretty rowdy bunch. So.
I'm Lenny Corso. I am a professor, adjunct professor at Ivy Tech College. It is my retirement hobby. It's not a job for me. I'm doing exactly what I want to do in retirement, giving back to young folks. I'm from Williamsport, Indiana. I went to Indiana State University for the first 2 years, and like so many others, I wasn't quite focused in my first 2 years. And so I saw where the draft was going to get me, and so I joined so I could choose my occupation. And I've always had an interest in medicine, science and medicine. And so I signed up to become a combat medic. Went to Fort Knox, Kentucky for basic. I was in 1966 to 69, so I went in December of 1966. Fort Knox, Kentucky for basic. My AIT, basic medical training, was in Fort Sam Houston, Texas. And it was there that I get one of the biggest sales pitches that the military can give you. And there was this Green Beret on the stage. Special Forces just looked awesome in his uniform. And he said, we're looking for medics, and we're going to train you and give you about 2 years of medical school in about a year. We're going to go far deeper than what you're doing right now as a combat medic. And so there were 500 of us in the theater, and 35 of us got up for some reason or another and went to the back of the theater. He talked to us about the security clearances, physical fitness, some other stuff. And essentially, I became, back then it was 91B4S, which is now 18 Delta for becoming a medic. So out of that 35, 5 of us made it to get our Green Berets through all the next year. Of course, we went from Fort Sam, we had to go to Airborne School, which is paratrooper school down at Fort Benning, Georgia. Went to Fort Bragg, North Carolina for more extensive medical training, then back to Fort Sam Houston, Texas for the more intense medical training, learning surgical procedures, dentistry, veterinary medicine. Back to Fort Bragg to finish what we call the field course, compass, learning how to navigate in the woods, and then spent the rest of my time at Fort Bragg. My orders for Vietnam were cut in November of 1968. They were going to give me a 30-day leave, which they normally give for everybody, and I was supposed to be in Vietnam in January, early January of 1969. But because I went in December of 1966, I only had 11 months left, so my orders were rescinded. I finished my term with the military, got out, went back to Indiana State, got an undergraduate degree in health science, a master's degree in physiology and health science, and they were just starting physician assistant programs back in the 70s, so a lot of the Vietnam medics went into those programs, and I came out and got a degree from IU School of Medicine and practiced as a PA for 10 years, went into pharmaceutical sales for 20, and now I'm just taking all that experience and now I'm sharing it with nursing students out at Ivy Tech, and it's very, very rewarding and very enjoyable. Sorry.
No, you're good, thank you. All right, our next question, can you tell us a little bit about the core values in your branch?
Okay, I'll go first. So the Air Force, for many years, they couldn't decide on their core values, and there's a lot of argument between what they would be. In 1994, I think is when General McPeak, he was the first one, he had 6 ideas of what he thought should be the core values. But it wasn't until 1995, I believe, and that was while I was in the Air Force, that they did announce that the 3 core values were integrity, service before self, and excellence in all we do.
So Marine Corps, 3 basic ones: honor, courage, commitment. And then if you're ever an NCO, you know the leadership traits of JJ did tie buckle. But
What was that? I'm sorry.
JJ did tie buckle, it's an acronym.
Okay.
It was really long. But honor, courage, commitment are the main ones with the Marine Corps.
I would say being held accountable for little details. Learning those little details add up to big decisions, and you know, when you become a sergeant or non-commissioned officer, you're responsible for other people, and you have to pay attention to detail, not only your own detail, but you have to pay attention to what they're doing and double and triple check to make sure everything is going the way it's supposed to go. And I think prior to going into the military, I wasn't detail oriented. It was just more broad-based stuff. And they get you to pay attention, and if you don't pay attention to detail, there's usually some pain involved.
Very conscientious. All right. And how have these values impacted your life now?
I would say that the 3 core values, that integrity, service before self, and excellence, that I've kept those same values for any job I've had since then, whether it be teaching, working for contractors for the Air Force, or now I work in HR, and I think I need to have all those values for any of those things that I've done, and I think I would have had them just from growing up with my parents too, so.
So it was very much a good fit then. Okay.
So I'll go a little bit about all 3 of them, but honor has a good and a bad way affecting you when you're in the civilian world. For the most part, it meaning sticking to your values. And you know, on a college campus, sometimes my values don't interact with others just as well. So I have to stick through them and have the courage to actually speak out when I see it. and it's done well for me so far. So, courage, again, part of that is, just having the moral courage to stand up for yourself and being able to, run with the ball. Commitment is the biggest one that's probably affected me, just due to the fact that from my time in to now, I've stayed committed to veterans. Maybe that could be a comfort thing, but I enjoy my commitment to veterans. I would do just about anything for veterans. I remember, I think, last Wednesday I got a call at about 11 a.m. For those of you who don't know, I'm also one of the chairmen for the Northwest Indiana Military Support Network, which basically means if anyone has a problem within some of the veteran service organizations in Northwest Indiana, they try to give me a call and I develop the resources and try to figure out how to fix the problem for a veteran. I actually got a call from a vet on Wednesday at 11 a.m. on my personal phone, so I knew it was from the support network. And he was just a vet. He was stuck at Marathon gas station, didn't have enough fuel to get home. So I drove from Purdue Northwest campus to Lansing, gave him $25, put it in his tank out of my own money, and sent him on his way. And then, just like with my vets at PNW, a lot of times they have a run-in with their professors, and I always tell them, it's my job to knife hand the professor, not yours. So that way they don't get in trouble. And I have a good and bad relationship with the faculty there because I stick up for my vets quite a bit, especially my National Guardsmen when they have on orders. So I take commitment very seriously, especially when it comes to committing to veterans that also serve. I also do QPR training, so I'm very committed to trying to make sure vets don't commit suicide. I'm sure many of you in this room, I know I deal with about 2 or 3 messages a year that say someone that I served with has passed from suicide. So that's a big aspect of my commitment. And I don't know if it's comfort or commitment, but I've stuck with vets ever since I got out, and I plan to retire at B&W working with vets. I've been offered jobs for a lot more pay, but if I'm not working with vets and helping vets, I don't feel comfortable. So they've definitely affected my life greatly. Honor, courage, and commitment have helped all the way, especially saying things that need to be said, that I feel need to be said within meetings and stuff like that. So.
I would say probably the way I was affected, I think integrity, accepting responsibility, being very reliable, being very dependable. I think if anything frustrates me in civilian life, and this is why I'm very demanding on my students at Ivy Tech, is when I tell you when an assignment is due, the assignment better be done when it's due. Don't tell me it's gonna come in an hour later, or I didn't have time, the dog ate my homework. I hold my students accountable, and they don't like that because in a lot of cases they're never held accountable for their actions. I praise them for when they're doing the correct things, but those are consequences. That I don't yell and scream and cuss at them like the military does, but they lose points towards their grade. And it's just a matter of the bulk of the students that I have are going into nursing. So I always relate back to my military experience about how there was pain involved, either emotional or physical pain, if you did not do something correctly. And all of you are going into nursing, many of them, 99% are going into nursing. And I say, when I write something out and it's on there, double and triple check what you're reading. I said, we're all human beings, and it's so easy just to glance over something and not really interpret what's being said. And I catch a lot of them because, it's kind of like one of those, if any of you have ever had this happen, a teacher gives an instruction and it says at the top, they give you a long length of instructions, but then the last one says, sign your name and turn the page in. But yet there's maybe 20 or 30 questions on there. And the people who actually read the material, read it, signed their name, dated it, and turned it back in. And you're sitting there wondering, how'd they go through that test so quickly? He didn't say anything about taking the test. He said sign and date. And those, paying attention to detail again, is important because, when you sign a rental contract, when you go and buy a car, when you go and purchase a home, it's very important to pay attention to detail. And where I keep bringing up to my students about reliability and dependability is doctors write orders from morning to afternoon, and you may be working an 8-hour shift. You better be checking that patient's chart because he could reduce the dosage of a certain med or increase the dosage of a certain med. And if you say, well, Dr. So-and-so always orders this med, he always orders this dosage, and you give the wrong med, then you wind up creating a big problem. So it's, you know, I really, what I learned about being dependable and reliable and focusing on the details in the military, that has helped me be more organized in civilian life and get involved in various organizations. And you know, when they ask you to do something, they're pretty confident you're gonna get it done.
Well, these individuals are very thorough. They've kind of already addressed this next question, but I'm gonna give you the chance if you want to add anything else. Is there any other stories or memorable moments about how your values have impacted your relationships outside of the military? Or your life outside of the military?
My husband is also a veteran. He was in the Army. We both come from families with people in the military, my grandfather and some other relatives, but my husband's family, he has siblings that were in the military, Navy, Army, and his father was in the Army for 20-something years and worked as a civilian for 20-something years and just retired a few years ago. So just having that my husband and I have some of the same values for our child and just things in common as far as how we want to raise him, and that he will have, you know, be reliable, dependable, committed to everything he does. So that comes in, and just working in the industry I work in now in human resources. I work for a company called White Lodging. I don't know if any of you have heard of that before, but you know, we deal with customers every single day and people out in the field, and what I like to teach our team is just that everyone, you know, does the best that they can, that they're dependable, that they say what they're gonna do.
So, I think there's big, there's professional relationships, and then you have, you know, the relationships you have with your significant others. I think there's a big difference between both of them. For one, I learned real quick with significant others, it's not always the best to say what's on my mind. That sometimes gets me in trouble. So that one kind of went against my values of, you know, standing up for what I believe in, because sometimes you just have to keep your mouth shut in a relationship, I've come to learn, in order to avoid fights and this, that, one or the other. When it comes to my civilian life, I do speak up a lot, especially at PNW, when I see something that I don't think is right. I do know when to hold my tongue sometimes, because I do know when there's like that staff NCO feeling of someone in the room, and I'm like, yeah, I'm just gonna hold my mouth, maybe I'll speak you offhand outside. But, I mean, honestly, the core values of the Marine Corps haven't really, so I'm gonna go into JJ the tie buckle. I'm not gonna try to go on a big rant, but for those who don't know, it's justice, judgment, decisiveness, initiative, dependability, tact, integrity, enthusiasm, bearing, unselfishness, courage, knowledge, loyalty, and equality. And I kind of live by those 12 leadership traits, and they very much, and tact is a big part of that when it comes to like speaking my mind and making things clear. And then also like when it comes to back to the commitment within the vet center at PNW, I've told multiple people at the university that the other 98% of the university is for students. That 2% of that vet center is for my veterans. I tell them it's not a safe space, it's a green zone. So they talk like they do, and I defended this on multiple occasions where someone might be offended by something that was said in the vet center. I tell them, if you're not a vet, I care less whether or not you're offended by it. That's where the vets are supposed to feel safe and feel comfortable with the way they are. So there's some good and bad impacts, but I think overall it's done well for me, and people see me take the leadership role in a lot of things first because of my military training. So.
I guess the one I'm gonna touch on here is, those of you that know me in the room, I'm not shy now, but one time I was very shy and quiet, and now they can't get me to shut up. That's why I have the 5-hour night classes or 5-hour afternoon classes. Overcoming adversity in life. When I went in the military, I had to overcome, you know, fear of heights, going to paratrooper school, and going to when, I just remember when I went back in the back of the room of that theater, when the Green Beret was asking for the volunteers. I didn't know, I mean, I was 5'6", 130 pounds at the time. And in my mind, I was never a big athlete, I was never an academic all-star. And I felt if I wasn't gonna be 6'4" and 204, what am I really gonna do? I'm just a little bit too big to become a jockey. So I said to myself, well, I'm gonna try it. If I don't make it, I'm gonna give it my best shot of going after the Green Berets and having that honor and privilege of earning that beret. And it was all the yelling and screaming and everything that took place in the military. They were pushing you. They were trying to get you to quit. And when I went through that training, the one thing I kept telling myself, and I share this with my students, you only lose when you quit. You're gonna fall down, and maybe you may not do well on one exam or some procedure or something. As long as you don't quit, let's go back and look at what maybe the errors you made, and let's learn from that. The fact that even my closest buddies at the time said, you're too small to become a Green Beret. And I remember how they laughed. These are my friends. And they could not believe that I actually went through and made it through the Green Beret training, which was absolutely brutal. It was brutal, and nothing in civilian life has even come close to that. So I like to tell my students is, I don't care if you were a C student or maybe even less than a C student in high school. This is college. This particular class, I teach a class called Advanced Human Physiology. It's a very challenging and difficult class. But I say, if you get through this class, you're not gonna have any problems in nursing school. And I have a big motivational slide presentation with videos. I show them a swimmer with no arms. Who told that kid that he can't swim? Here it is, he has no arms and he's setting the Special Olympics records. What about the wrestler without any legs and maybe one arm? And he's wrestling at a small college. And so these were adversity, and for me at Ivy Tech, there is you're dealing with a lot of non-traditional students. They are dealing with things that normally the typical student wouldn't deal with, going through divorce, domestic abuse, maybe losing a job or trying to work 30 and 40 hours a week and taking a couple of classes. And one of the beauties I like personally at Ivy Tech is our classes are small. For me personally, my classes cannot be any larger than 24, because that's the size of our labs. But a class such as this size here, I get to know each and every person in my class, and I get to know them very well. And sometimes they were willing to share the adversity, and you're able to guide them on where they can go and get the help they can. And in several cases, that will be the veterans coming back to college as well. So getting the students to believe in themselves. I know I have older students that come back, maybe they've gone through a divorce, and they realize, they have to go back to school to make a good living, decent living. And I remember the older students coming to me and saying, I don't know if I'd become a nurse or not. And I said, look, when I came back from the military, I went in the military at age 20, got out at 23. Before I went in the military, I was sitting in the back row. When I came out of the military, I'm sitting in the front row. I had some leadership skills. I was not afraid to ask questions. And with you have things that these 18 and 19 and 20-year-old kids coming out of high school don't have. You have self-discipline. You're willing to sacrifice your time to learn the material. The chances of you doing better in this class than that type of students is far greater. So don't sell yourself short. And I know when I use my own experience when I went back to Indiana State, even though I'd gone through all that medical training in the military and a lot of testing and stuff, I was still uncertain. And these are young peps fresh out of high school, and they're probably going to kill me on the exams. And I found out that my self-discipline, my willingness to sacrifice social time to learn material, and all of a sudden I was blowing the curve. And I use that saying, you're at a different stage of your lifetime, in your late 20s and 30s and maybe even in your 40s, going back to school. that these kids don't know. And trying to explain maturity to a teenager is like trying to explain oxygen in this room to somebody that's in, 5 or 6 years of age. You have to experience it. You can't tell people about it.
He's just on it, because he went right into the next question. So, if you feel like you've already answered it, don't feel obligated to answer this question, but, our last and final question before we open it up for greater discussion is, how have your values changed before, during, or after your military service?
I like what Lenny said about, after being in the military, you just have a lot more dedication and responsibility, and you're ready. Like, I graduated high school, I had a cross-country scholarship, and I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. I started going to cross-country practice for a school in Illinois, and after running there, I just wasn't sure. And so that's when I decided to join the Air Force, and I think the 4 years in the Air Force gave me the values and just understanding of what hard work is, that when I finally did, after the Air Force, go back to school, I went to University of Central Florida. I was ready, I knew what I wanted to do, and I was just a lot more disciplined, and graduated summa cum laude, and
Congratulations.
So before, man, my values before I joined the Marine Corps were basically find a way to get drunk. I was in high school then, so I joined when I was 17. I was in the delayed entry program for a year. Left for boot camp the month I turned after 18. So when it comes to values before I left, my father had instilled some work values in me, like attention to detail and never take shortcuts. But that was mostly because I was interested in being a mechanic. I learned real quick that, if you put the wrong fluids in a brake master cylinder, you can cause someone to crash into a school bus and kill a bunch of kids. So take responsibility and don't take shortcuts, and know what you're doing, attention to detail. During, I think my time during the Marine Corps, one of the things I always reflect on is that you always hate the times when you're in them, and then you miss them the moment they're gone. And I think that's a big thing with the Marine Corps that happened to me, was when I was in, I was like, man, this sucks. I hate it. Even though I tried to re-enlist, I did get denied because they were downsizing at the time. Because I had just gotten back from deployment, and I loved deployment. But when I was in, I hated, a lot of the things during my time in the Marine Corps, because it was going to garrison where it was uniform inspections all the time, this, that, or the other. And I just wanted to go overseas to Afghanistan. And then when I got out, I missed a lot of those fun stories and what I thought were hard times, and how much I actually missed them, and how many stories it actually gave me. I mean, if you ever come to the PNW Vet Center, you'll probably see me there telling some story that happened either to me or someone else when I was in the Marine Corps. And then after my military service, I'd say, like they said, I was a lot more buttoned down. I wasn't in that party mindset, which is a big thing, because I went to SIU Carbondale. So if you don't have that don't party mindset, I mean, you'll get lost on Illinois Street and all the bars. So being buttoned down, that helped me out a lot. Also, hanging out with other veterans who had the same values. One of the stories I have is when I first got to SIU, I was in a marketing class. And part of the marketing classes was we had to design a cereal box. And I remember I was in this class, and there was this 18-year-old student in there, and he got up and yelled at the teacher. He's like, "How am I supposed to afford a cereal box to do this design? You should be providing them." And I kind of looked at him, and I was like, you walked in here with a Starbucks. Like, you paid for a cereal box just getting coffee. And it's that different mindset of like, just do what you need to do and just quit complaining. Like, what you need to do, get it done. And unfortunately that is a big problem when it comes to working in higher ed. I'm sure Lenny can approve, is that a lot of vets have that idea of get the degree and get out. So it's hard to get them to focus on, coming in for the Student Veterans Associations or extra meetings or stuff like that. Although once they do and they realize that there's a bunch of veterans there that are just like them, then they start to come more often. I definitely have my regulars. And there's good times, but I don't know if my values have changed, between during and after, but I definitely can say that I use them more now after than I did during. Because during, I did as I was told. Yes, staff sergeant, and then walked off, fixed the tank, and then go on. Before, my values before the Marine Corps were just non-existent for the most part. So they definitely, especially with the mindset of boot camp where they break you down and then build you up, and then the final phase is polishing you up. I definitely say a lot of the bad habits that I had were broken down in the first phase, and then in second phase where, you know, you go to the rifle range, you go to field days, stuff like that. You break it, and then the final part is polishing, which is, you know, all your uniform inspections and stuff like that. And that's where that attention to detail really comes into play. Yeah, I think there's a huge difference between me before and after. And then I kind of carry a lot of the during with me now, and I think that might be because, you know, I still work with veterans all the time, so we all have that same mindset still.
Well, I guess for me, probably one of the most impactful things was, when I went back in my Green Beret training, I worked the burn center at Fort Sam Houston, Texas, Brooke Army Medical Center. Horrific burns. Virtually, I think even civilians go there for horrific burns. And working on the burn center for a short period of time, just kind of it hit me to be very appreciative for your health, and that things can happen to you in a millisecond that can change your entire life. I think the leadership that I learned in the military and I came out gave me probably a little more patience. I think I gained a little more compassion for individuals and what they may be going through, because sometimes you don't know everything you're going through. And going back to veterans, you know, a lot of my veterans that are in my class, usually most of the veterans were medics and they're going to nursing school. I think one of the things I noticed when I got out was people being polite and not yelling and cussing at you all the time, you know, and you know, it was just people said, "What can I do for you, sir?" And it was just, although it was the 60s and they're going back to college, was a little rough sometimes with the way the anti-war movement was going on. But I think it was just the appreciation of people just being nice to you. You understanding that it's not about you, that people's lives could have a lot of bad stuff going on for them. And I guess the hardest thing, and I'll throw this out to my two colleagues here, until you've had it rough like that, and nobody says nice things to you, and they demand this and demand that, I think many of us veterans have a low tolerance for civilians complaining. And I think that's probably the biggest challenge that I have personally is, you know, when you eat cold food and you eat leftover sea rations from World War II and Korean War, and you just had to gut through it. You couldn't complain, you're not gonna change it. I think that's probably the biggest thing that I have to hold myself back on is people who have not served or people who have not had a lot of adversity in their life, the constant moaning, groaning, and complaining over little stuff. My experience at the restaurants, you know, come out and maybe the waitress of the service, "Oh, so those are cold, you know, the broccoli's cold, I don't see the steam coming off of them." I said, "Don't worry about it." Or they maybe bring me mashed potatoes instead of French fries. Don't worry about it, okay? It's all gonna go to the same place in the stomach, it gets churned the same way. And I think when we've all gone through that kind of difficulty, appreciate the finer things of life. And the finer things of life are not bigger houses and bigger, nicer cars. It's the simple things of life. And I think we all appreciate having good health, which is the number one priority, and then good health for our families and our friends. So that's what I brought out of it.
Is there anything else as panelists you would like to share before we open it up for questions or comments? Good. All right. So now it is, as an audience, your time. If you have any questions, comments, discussion,
I have
feel
a
free.
question.
Yeah.
As a female in the military, was your basic training, your initial training, was it the same as your male counterparts, or were there differences?
It was separate, so it was just all women in my squadron. But for the Air Force, I would think that we do the same type of boot camp.
Okay.
Same, you still have to qualify for the same things as far as obstacle courses and, shooting M16s and things like that. I don't know if times were different for different obstacle course things, cause we were separate, but I'm not positive, but, then afterwards I went to tech school at Shepherd Air Force Base for engineering, and then that was a little bit more, I still lived in dorms, barracks, whatever, that were female, but our training was co-ed. And so for that, all of our training was, you had to have the same scores and pass.
Thank you.
Any other thoughts, questions, comments? Points you'd like to discuss?
I wanted to find out what the VNA stood for, what do they do?
Sure, so VNA historically stands for Visiting Nurses Association. We don't really use that designation anymore, so we're VNA Hospice of Northwest Indiana is our current branding. So we have a variety of services from hospice, palliative care. We provide Meals on Wheels in Porter County for homebound seniors. We have a medical guardian alert button to help seniors remain independent and in their homes. Then we also offer a variety of grief support services, including the Phoenix Center, which is specifically grief support for children. So we're a local nonprofit. We serve anyone regardless of their ability to pay. And our mission is to make best days possible for anyone that we can. So part of being a hospice provider, the We Honor Veterans program, which is why we're hosting this panel discussion today. So our kind of professional association, the National Hospice and Palliative Care Organization, partners with the VA to offer the We Honor Veterans program. And so as a level 5 partner, which is the highest level you can be, we have certain activities that we need to host every year. And so the panel discussion is one of them. So we get to pick whatever topic we want. And so we talked to some of our veteran staff members and they were like, this is what I think the topic should be this year. And that's how we came up with core values and veterans. So that's kind of the VNA in a nutshell,
Okay.
and why we're here today and what we're doing.
I got a second part of the
Sure.
question. Veterans, would they, if they needed hospice care, would that be something that they could
Mhm.
receive if they needed it, and how does that happen?
Yeah,
Does the
so-
family have to get involved, or the veteran himself, or?
So for anyone, any human being, the way hospice works is it comes through a referral. So you do need a doctor's order. That could be from the VA, it could be from your primary care doctor, anything like that. So 2 physicians have to certify that the patient is hospice appropriate. The first being the one that makes the referral, and then we have a second on staff that can verify that. And then once that person comes onto hospice, if they're a veteran, we follow our We Honor Veterans protocol. So there's a special honoring ceremony. Our chaplains can provide any needs for the spiritual end of life care. We offer things like vet-to-vet cafes. So a current veteran, a veteran volunteer can come in and meet with that veteran that's on services. We can do a group setting. So we offer, the We Honor Veterans program helps us offer a lot of specific services specific to the veterans. So that's what that is. But yeah, veterans, anyone can get hospice. The kind of guideline for hospice is a prognosis of 6 months or less. So you've been diagnosed with a life-limiting illness, and they expect, it doesn't have to be within 6 months. So a lot of times people can graduate from hospice, or they can extend it up to 2 years. So it's a very, very flexible program. But yeah, anybody can get it. But we do take that extra step, and that's part of being that level 5 provider, is that we take special care and attention to veterans and their needs at the end of their life.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
There's no charge too, by the way.
Yes, yeah, so when you go to hospice, we'll bill your Medicare, Medicaid, insurance, the VA, whatever you have, and then there's no additional charges for anything. Other thoughts, questions, comments? Anything anyone would like to share in the audience about any of the things we talked about today?
You guys wanna tell a story?
Can I ask the audience a question?
Sure.
So how many people, I see some veterans, obviously, how many people out here are veterans?
the majority of the room.
I'm Kevin. And I think you said you were Navy, correct, sir? You said you were Navy?
Yeah, Jim?
Yeah. You guys mind telling me your ranges, just so?
My name's Rob Klett. I was, U.S. Army, Vietnam for 9 months, actually. I was a chaplain's assistant.
My name's Frank Gonzalez. I was with the Air Force from '84 to '92. One of the highlights of my time was spent my second half of my second enlistment at the infamous Area 51, so that does exist. It is a real place.
Do you
But
have
it's like,
pictures?
no, barely got any memories, to be honest. Not because I was intoxicated, because they wouldn't let know anything like that up there, but it's just a normal place, a normal base. It functions like a normal base. It's just hard to get up to. Unless you belong there, you won't get up there. And it was at the time we were supporting the F-177A, the stealth fighter. So that's what was up there now. It closed down when I left, and I'm sure it started up with something else for somebody else. So those places do exist. And for 20 years, I had signed, paperwork, national security paperwork that said I wouldn't talk about it, but those 20 years are well gone. So I can speak freely, and I'm sure it doesn't mean that much anyways. But it was my time in the Air Force I had a lot of ups and downs, but overall, I'm glad that I did it. It made me a better person overall. And sometimes when I think if I didn't do it, I don't know where I would have been now, so it was good that the good Lord put me there in the struggles and in the good times, and overall, I appreciate it very much.
There's one thing I think the military does that makes you more humble. My time in Afghanistan, for those of you who went to Afghanistan, those of you who didn't, but over there, if you have a window, you're upper class. So when I came back to the United States, like seeing people complain about, the small stuff, you have a glass window in your house, you have running plumbing in Afghanistan, you are top tier 1%, because other than that, it's an irrigation pond and a mud hut. So I think it's really, it's humbling when you get back here, and then, I'm perfectly happy with my 3 acres and small house on, enough land that, I can zero my rifle.
You got that gentleman in the background there, sir? When did you serve? Who did you serve with?
Air Force, 56, 59. I went in Friday the 13th in January of 56, and got out December of 59. And I had a good time. Went to Germany, and I made up my mind they weren't going to kill me and eat me. So, make the best of whatever came along. Couldn't get any rank because I was in a frozen career field. So I stayed airman second the whole time. And they came in there one day and wanted me to re-enlist. I said, for what? Met my wife in Germany. She was an American studying over there. And so we stayed together for 62 years. She died on me last February.
Congratulations.
I got a dog. What can I say?
Jim, what about you?
Well, I guess what I learned how to be a leader. I thought I was a leader my whole life, being president of the classes and being a coxswain on the crew, but I realized in the service, in the Navy, when I got 60 of the toughest, meanest sailors in the Navy as both mates, I got 60 of them, and I realized that to become a good leader, they knew I was their officer. They knew that. I didn't have to tell them that. So I started doing things and taking care of them, and sometimes I had to forge leaves because the LDO was on shore messing around. Did that, almost got court-martialed, go drinking with my boys. Almost got court-martialed. But I got that division because it was the worst division on the ship. The old man on the bridge said, the second division officer is locked up in his stateroom. They're threatening to throw him over the side. And he said, I want you to take over second division. And I said, Captain, that's the worst division on the ship. We got 5,000 men on board, and it's the worst division. He says, I know, but I want you to take it over. So, being 5'7" and 135 pounds, I go down there and form them up, and I heard that it was zip guns, chains, switchblades, in their rooms, in the bedroom. So I said, we're gonna stay here until we check everything out. We had 6 African Americans in our division, and they had them in the corner. And I said, I want them and I want them spread out. I don't want this like this. So I did that. So I'm walking back and forth, the 60 men, and I take off my goal bars and throw them on the deck. And I said, which one of you here think you can kick my butt? I didn't say that exactly that way, but and they started laughing, and some of them fell on the deck. I mean, they were laughing when you got to do it. So I said, if you do, after muster, you be in gear lock. Well, I had people in gear lock with pipes, and I said, you piece some skulls if anybody follows me in here. And fortunately, none of them did. But through the year, we started, they were the worst. By the time we got back from Vietnam, they got to eat. They were the best, because they started working hard, they weren't messing around, it was, and I learned, I said, that's how you become a leader, and I think it's helped me the rest of my life, because you don't have to tell anybody you're the boss.
Right.
They know it, but you gotta help them so that they can get the job done. It's like Ronald Reagan, he wasn't that good, but he surrounded himself with people to get the job done that he wanted. So that's what the Navy did for me, and I thank the Navy. I was fortunate, we went all over the world on that aircraft carrier. We were stationed in Mayport, Florida, so we went to the Med many times. But then when we got a call for Vietnam, we had to go around Cape Horn and Cape Hope and to get to the Philippines in order to deploy. So it's, I tell people, I said, you might wanna just go in the service for one time, just to learn, because it'll make you a better person, because these kids today, they're different than we were, and that's what I tell them, I talk to them all the time, I say, think about the service for a few years, you'll always have a
One
job.
of the things that I recall that impressed me the most, when you go high school and college, but you got a broad base of material. I think for me personally, when I went as a medic, everything I learned, and the training was excellent, everything I learned was about the human body. I wasn't doing philosophy and English and the other things. And I think that kind of helped me with my focus on things that I really need to learn. And I've always shared that with students, that if you decide to go in the military, and of course I think all of us here enjoyed the GI Bill. I know for me it paid 5 of my 7 years of college. But the training is absolutely excellent, no matter what branch you go into. Sir?
Kevin Hochek, I was in the Army, 3 years active, 1 year in the reserves, deployed with the 101st to Iraq when that started back in '03. And similar like Anthony, I've been working with veterans since. So now I'm at the Vet Center in Crown Point, where we do mental health counseling services for combat veterans and veterans who were exposed to sexual trauma in the military.
Thanks, sir. Anyone else? Is anybody else here? I'm sure nobody sit behind a post there.
Well, thank you all so much for sharing, and veterans, thank you for your service. I don't think we said that yet today. And It needs to be said, it's not just implied. So, thank you again for attending, our panel discussion today. A sincere and, deepest gratitude to our panelists, for sharing your stories today, and everyone in the audience for contributing as well. We and our Veterans Committee at the VNA and Pines Village as well for making today possible. I do have some additional information available about the VNA if you would like it. I can hand out business cards and set up some additional meetings about our services. So thank you again and have a wonderful day.
Could I put in one plug here?
Sure.
This is for the Kiwanis, Rotary, Valpo Kiwanis, Valpo Rotary Dinner. Rob, I know you have attended one of those dinners. I don't know if anybody else has, but I know Jim has too. Jim is a co-chair over in the Rotary Club for the Veterans Dinner, and we merged for this event both of our clubs, and we have had, at least since 2016, 2017, we've had sellouts at every one of the Veterans Dinner. We have the Valparaiso University Community Band, we have a guest speaker, and it's a wonderful evening. Goes usually from about 5 o'clock until about 8:30. We have been holding it at the Old Town Banquet Center. We're not sure where it's gonna go yet. We think we may be going to the Expo Center. It is always before Veterans Day in November, because we never hold it on the exact day of Veterans Day because there's so many other things going on. So we usually have it usually the Wednesday, or this year it might be 2 Wednesdays before Veterans Day. We're looking at November the 1st. Again, this is all in pencil. And we're hoping, we're not sure yet, but we're hoping to get Jessica Lynch as a speaker. Jessica was captured and tortured, and I think she was in Iraq, and she was held captive for about 10 days or so. I heard her speak over at the Horseshoe Casino, and they had the DAV. Bob Carnegie was involved with that program, and we're hoping that we can bring her here. I know she's got it penciled in on the calendar, but a lot of things have to happen for us to have that. So we will start promoting that right after Popcorn Festival. We actually may start before Popcorn Festival if we get her as a speaker. But keep that in mind. We are the largest veterans dinner importer in LaPorte County. Once we merged Rotary and Kiwanis, once we merged our efforts together, we've had sellouts every year, especially since we moved it to the evening time. So just kind of keep that in the back of your memory bank, and you'll see it on social media, and you might hear it through the VNA and a few other places as well. So, and it's open to guests. In fact, people buy a whole table. I know one, she bought a whole table and brought her grandfather. He was a World War II vet, and there were 2 years ago. We had 3 World War II vets. And I think 2 of them have passed away since that time. So, that's a great evening. So, thank you.
Thank you, Lynn.
Yes, sir.
Expo Center, you mean the Porter County Fairgrounds?
Yes,
Yes.
yes, sir. Yes, sir. That's where we're at right now. It's really getting, I'm sorry on the sidebar here. but
That's okay.
It's, the old Strongbows is closed down. Old Town Banquet Center is closing down. I don't know if they're gonna remodel. I think a lot of people are waiting for the Journeymans to be built because they're gonna have a big facility there, but we're about 2 years away for that to happen. And you look at other big banquet centers, you have to look at Avalon, you look at Aberdeen pulls some, but not a lot. And it's just been challenging right now to try to find a facility, and that's what everybody's struggling with. I know Kiwanis had to move their program. I think Rotary's moved theirs to another facility as well.
Not yet, but.
Not yet, well, yeah, I think they moved up the date to be out of the old town by, we thought we had until March
March.
1st, but we're getting out of there in February,
Oh,
I
yeah.
guess. So, yeah, so it's just, I think, well, the youngsters here, those of us that were from the Vietnam era and we came back on campus, and I never had the bad experiences that some people had in San Francisco or Oakland, but man, they just didn't care. The professors didn't care. You say I just served 3 years in the military. Okay, next. And it's just so different now, and quite honestly, that's, the Vietnam era guys, became really active, and that's, what is it, Terry Scruggs was the one, he was an E5, he's the one that got the Vietnam War Memorial in DC, got it going, he got a relationship going with the politicians, and, one of the billionaires that are blocking the scene right now. You see that getting built, next thing you know, you have a Korean War veteran, a memorial, then you finally have a World War II memorial, and now, if you look at the Lincoln Memorial, you're looking right at it, there's vacant land over here, and they're gonna have, I don't know if they're gonna call it a Desert Storm Memorial or a Middle East Memorial, but that's in the process of being built right now, off to the right hand side, but it's, I think the Vietnam guys, and then the success of Desert Storm in the early 90s kind of finally turned people around a little bit to appreciate. You don't really have to dodge the bullets to sacrifice, you just have to, you're away from family a lot. And at least back in our day, we had phone booths. I don't think you two know what phone booths are. Maybe. So, rotary phones, so call and collect, will you accept the charges? So anyhow, but it's a lot different now, and it's, the VNA, what they're doing, it, a lot of the other organizations, there certainly were no veteran centers in college when we went back, so, it's a privilege to be able to help those folks out. Thank you.
Thank you all for everything that you do. Have a great day, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm doing well, how are you?
And then I also will be here the whole week. Yeah, so, if you want to help with the veterans.
Oh, God.